No masks, just the truth, the full truth about what it's like to grow up in the spotlight of ministry and still come out standing.
Hi, my name is Marley.
My name is Aaron.
My name is Antonia. Welcome to the Full Disclosure Project.
These aren't just stories, they're turning points. The stuff that shaped us, shifted us, and stayed with us.
Can you share a meaningful story, good, funny, difficult, or defining from your journey as a PK?
There are so many stories I can tell. I think one of the stories that stands out most prominent for me, this was at a time where I had already stepped away from the physical church building for a while, and I was coming back still in ministry the entire time. And my singing group United, we were practicing on a Friday night, and our pianist was he was talking about his foot was hurting him and whatever, and we're like, oh, hope you feel better. And then when we came back to the church Sabbath morning, he walks in with a big old boot on his foot. He fractured his foot and still came to play for us. And so that in itself, we were so grateful to have him there in that time. And so our group, we were responsible for the whole music for the service. So intro, special music, praise and worship, everything. And so we did that. We did what God sent us there to do. And at the end of the service, we wanted to have just a quick prayer with all of our musicians and all of our singers. And as our pianist stands up to pray with us, he starts going that way. So what do? We're all like, to catch it, because we were really, really afraid of what was going to happen with this person with a broken foot, okay? And as we're there and everyone's trying to make sure he was okay, and we're again trying to get back into the frame of mind to pray, we're holding hands. This man comes from the back of the church, walking up the front, cursing us out, literally cursing us out and telling us we need to get out of the church. In that moment, I decided I'm going to use my mouth. So I said to him, excuse me, we were just getting ready to pray, thinking, maybe an explanation would help, the situation. It didn't. He continued with his cursing and walked away. So again, rerouted my mind frame for us to actually have the prayer. We had the prayer. And as the prayer ended, I noticed another lady who was standing there who saw the whole thing. And so I just approached her gently and I asked her if she could let me know that gentleman's name, because I would have liked to follow up about the situation. And what I got in return was a hand flash in my face and someone turning their back and walking away. In that moment, I was livid. I literally felt the temperature rise from my toes all the way up. And I still was trying to compose myself even in that moment. We have our pianist who still came to worship with us. We have us who we have our own struggles and we still came to worship, and then we're getting cursed out and told to leave. That didn't sound right to me. And then what really kind of tipped me over the edge was the fact that there was maybe 15 to 20 grown adults sitting right there in the front of the sanctuary who saw the entire interaction, from the time our pianist was falling to us being cursed out to the lady flashing her hand in my face. And the only time any one of them said anything was when I started to react and get upset. They were telling me it was okay, don't worry about it. And that was really what pushed me over the edge, because it was unacceptable and it wasn't okay. In that moment, everything flooded from my experiences of growing up in the church, and all the negativity I've had to experience. And then even standing there and looking down the sanctuary and seeing all the young people sitting at the back. And I'm like, this is the environment that we're creating for these other young people. It's ridiculous. And so I stormed out of the sanctuary. I stormed out of the church, again, trying to compose myself. And as soon as I exited the doors, I broke down. I broke down in tears. I was inconsolable. I was shaking. It was like an out of body experience. Everything that I'd been holding of that brokenness was being released in that moment. And I was ushered into the pastor of that church's office, where I guess we had a meeting to kind of go over what happened. And I was assured that it would have been taken care of. Long story short, nothing was done about it. And not only was nothing done, we then received an email, our singing group, we received an email saying that because of who those people are and because they are upstanding members of the church, it is unlikely that what I said happened actually happened. And for me, that was the final slap in the face. And it was really difficult. It was something that I still sit with a lot of the times. Even that church itself, I have to brace myself if I ever have to walk into that building. The disrespect, the gaslighting, the expectation that because of how I present, whether it's as a PK, whether it's me looking like a young person, that I'm expected to just deal with it and carry on. It ended that day, and that was it for me.
Even the meeting, I actually want you to elaborate more on the meeting part, in quotations. We were ushered in, we sat with a bunch of people, but who did most of the talking? Who was taking any responsibility in that room? What did it feel like in that meeting?
In that meeting, it felt like damage control. Even us being ushered into the pastor's office was to get us away from everyone else who was witnessing what was happening. It was their way of trying to control the optics of the situation. The pastor himself barely said anything. Any question that we asked, it was turning to the elder there to get the answer to give us. And again, nothing much was said. It was a bunch of hot air. Even in that moment, we had that recollection. And we still had hope that there would be some follow-up and some sort of resolution, especially as us being guest ministers to that church. Again, it was just added insult to injury.
When did we get that email, and how did we get that email? How did we get that acknowledgement? Wasn't it you hounding them and constantly being like, I'm still waiting on an answer? I'm still waiting on an answer?
Yeah, that is actually what happened. So like I said, enough was enough. I wasn't gonna let this one go. I had let so much go before. This one, it wasn't gonna happen. And the pastor let us know, oh, I'll follow up with you tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. The day after came and went. And so, you know, some of that privilege as a PK, I used it. So I told my dad exactly what happened. You need to speak to your peer because this is what I experienced in his congregation. Only then is when I got a phone call from the pastor that promised follow-up. And in that follow-up, it was the I'm sorry's, but. And we know but means everything you said before that is null and void. And so I encouraged the pastor, you know, there was a camera right there. Please look at the camera and come back and let me know, right? How many years later? 6 years later? Still waiting for that follow-up. And it was also interesting because after the fact, a few weeks after, one of the youth pastors who wasn't there that day, he messaged me on Instagram to apologize. And that was the only apology that was ever received for that incident. What is like a meaningful story, or when you reflect back, what is a moment that like shaped you or stayed with you? And can you paint the picture and take us there and walk us through it?
Moments that shaped. I remember, I don't know if this shaped me or I don't know if this shapes me or if it kind of just like is a reflection of who I already was by this time at this age. Because I remember when I was a kid, when we were in Windsor, I might have been maybe 7 or maybe 8, somewhere around, like young. I remember there was a guy who started coming to our church. I forget what his name is. But he played instruments and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that guy's really cool because he plays instruments, right? And he played like a bunch of the instruments that I couldn't play yet. But he was very like, he must have been in his like mid 20s or so. He felt like ancient because I was a kid, but he must have absolutely been like 23 or something like that, if he was even that old. And he, up until this point, I was like given free range as far as like touch whatever instrument you want to touch kind of thing. But now there was like, oh yeah, the bass guitar, like don't play with it. He was like, don't play with bass guitar at me. And I remember being like indignant about that. I remember being like, the nerve of this man to tell me I can't play the bass guitar, to the point where I quite literally found the scripture, the stuff of the little children scripture. I went and I found that and I brought it in the Bible, and I was like he was like, what? And I was like, because I was like, you're an adult. I should not have to explain things to you. Here's the book. Read the book. You see the thing, and you get it. And he didn't do it. And I was like, he's hopeless. And I closed it, and I was like, it's fine. I'll play piano. But yeah, I don't know if that's a shaping or if it is a reflection, because I was always very much that kind of kid. Yeah.
The closest thing that I could really compare growing up as a pastor's kid to is like being a celebrity's child, because it doesn't really come with the finances and those benefits, but it is definitely this understanding that no matter where you are, people are going to know who you are. I say that because my story, or little tidbit from growing up as a pastor's kid, is that you can never go anywhere without somebody knowing your parents.
Tell us.
I don't know if you experience this, but I will be on the other side of the world, okay? I will be in Florida, or I will be somewhere way out in Trinidad or something, and be like, oh, your dad is Pastor Milton Edwards. Oh my gosh, I know him. I used to know you when you were a baby. I don't know if anybody else experiences that. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know who this person is. Like, I don't. And so it's funny because when I got married and my husband posted a photo of us online, she's also a pastor, and she said she got a flood of messages, and she's Trinidadian. My family is from Jamaica. So she got a flood of messages being like, oh my goodness, that's so-and-so's daughter. I remember him. And it's just so crazy that there is no privacy. It is great, but it's also challenging. And I think you also have to be a little bit aware of what you post online and like how you are in public. So, yeah.
It's interesting that still to this day.
To this day.
I think I was 15, maybe 17. And it didn't happen to me, but I was witnessing it, and it really changed my like brain chemistry in that moment. Growing up and hearing, everyone's accepted, everyone's loved, come as you are, yada, 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 and being like, cool, like that's how we should be approaching it. That's what, Christ preaches about in the book. We read about this. God says, love your neighbor, all these things. Like, this is who you are. You say this is who you are. Cool, I love you, and let's, keep moving from there. I was standing in the foyer of the church that we were attending when we were living in Alberta, and there was a couple that came in that I had never seen before. And they walked into the church, jeans, t-shirt, just like very casual, like, so used to going to church, everyone's like dressed up, like dresses this, heels that, hair done, blah, blah. They walked in. I noticed them as two people I'd never seen before, didn't think anything of it. The person who was greeting at the door, however, took it upon themselves in that moment to not only greet them, but then admonish them in the same sentence, and essentially made a comment about what they were wearing and said, but it's fine though, because the next time you come, we'll sure that, you'll probably wear something more appropriate. And I remember and I was like, that's not right. And I I had never encountered that before. I'd never been in a position where I could speak on it before. And being so young and knowing that like, if I were to say anything in that moment, it would have made the situation even more awkward. And I didn't want the couple who had come in to feel even weirder about the situation that happened. Because really my beef was with the person who said this to them. And I didn't want them to feel awful or then get up and leave. But I never saw them again. Like, never once set foot back in that church again. And who's to say if they were even people that were living in town? They could have come from out of town. Mm-hmm. And they just saw a space and said, oh, that'd be cool to go see and check it out. That sounds great. But then as soon as they were told that they weren't good enough, they're like, I'll just go elsewhere. And I had a moment where I was like, oh, so it could be anybody. It could be any of us. The second that we step outside of, you know, God's light, essentially we step out of favor or out of what people, you know, deem as acceptable, you're cut. And I really struggled with that because as somebody who grew up being more comfortable in like jeans or like trousers and slacks or too, and just being like, I love dresses, I loved all those things too, but otherwise sometimes I wanted to switch it up. I really loved fashion. And to this day, it's something that I really enjoy. And I wanted to be able to express myself that way. And I started from that time into my 20s, fights with my parents about how I chose to like dress and identify myself. And I'd always be like, what's the problem though? Like, I'm not going to church in like ripped up clothing and like pajamas. Like, I look good. Like, you can't deny that I look good. Like, I'm so confused as to why I can't go to church in these pants that I bought and these, like, I look good. Like, I don't get it. Like, also, come as you are. Is that not how this works? Like, come as you are. Like, I'm coming with, you know, pure heart, good intentions, all the stuff. I want to go and worship. But I'm being told that if I don't put on a pencil skirt, then like somehow this is bad. And it always took me back to that place where I was like, I have to dress a certain way in order to be accepted, in order to be, you know, loved, essentially. My salvation somehow was wrapped up in whether or not I wore a dress versus if I wore, you know, a clean-cut pair of trousers that I was like so excited to wear because it goes with the outfit. And now I can't, the top doesn't go with whatever else you want me to put it with. Now I have to choose a whole other outfit, but I can't iron anything because now it's Sabbath. So like, we're at an impasse now. And now we've been standing here downstairs yelling at each other for 30 minutes when you should have just left me. Like, I don't even want to go to church anymore. Like, I'm upset. Like, I'm going to church now, like, just so mad that like I couldn't rock the outfit that I was so excited to wear because I didn't realize that it wasn't okay. Yeah, and I struggled so much because of that incident, and then because of those moments with my parents that would just be this like, as a family, we don't wear, you know, pants to church. You know, the women wear this, and I'd be like, that's dumb though. Like, that's, like, you hear yourselves, like, that doesn't sound, that's stupid. Like, you can't just tell people what they can and can't wear. Like, that's not right. But then I would comply because, you know, they weren't going to leave me at home by myself. Like, that wasn't an option. So I would just have to go to church, sour-faced, in an outfit I didn't want to wear, feeling like, you know, I had somehow stepped out of God's favor if I decided to wear pants, but then being like, that's not true. But I can't reason with the two people in the house that pay the bills. So, yeah, it took me on a ride, and it definitely shaped a lot of the decisions I made later on, and the interactions that I had, and how I approached church later on really shifted because of those moments that felt super inconsequential, but were rough. And I, you know, didn't feel like I needed to compromise in order to like be loved by God. You know, like it really felt like I was being told I was doing too much and that I was wrong. And I knew I wasn't wrong, but I didn't have the words to articulate that. And I also didn't have the I wasn't adult enough to say no. Yeah.
Growing up in that environment, there's kind of like this encouragement of like blind faith. And it, I think, translates in different ways that sometimes people don't really account for, right? And that's a thing that you learn in the Bible. Like, it teaches you like blind faith, but they don't really specify blind faith when it comes to God, right? And so when you're growing up and you're a child and you're learning about these things, you're like blind faith. So that this means you should just believe leadership, or you should just, and so I think that now, or previously, because I am starting to like unlearn these things, or like even am able to identify them, but it definitely affects sometimes because you don't really get taught a lot of individuality and accepting individuality and having your own opinions. So that being said, the way that kind of affected my faith, I think I didn't do a lot of the work for myself to just find out what I believe as a Christian and find out like my personal walk, because I was kind of just going with the blind faith. And I think when you're a child and you're a teenager, that kind of contributes to a little bit of an identity crisis. And so thankfully, I have a lot of wonderful people around me who have experienced a lot of the same things, and who are in touch with who they are, who remind you like, hey, it's okay to take a moment and be who you are and be yourself. But I would say that that is something that I kind of learned and got from church that affected me in a way that I didn't really think it would have.
Like, people see when you go to the church and you're like, the podium where like the preacher stands, where the musicians are. Like, most people who are congregational, like who just are in the congregation, won't really go up there because they don't really have business up there, and it's kind of like, oh, that's like the altar, and that's like this sacred barrier plate. Like, people don't go there unless they have a reason to go there. But I was always, first of all, my dad's up there, I'm gonna go. It was like when I was a kid, it was like, my daddy up there, I'm gonna go. And then eventually it was like, that's where the piano is, why would I be anywhere else? That's where the guitar is, why would I be anywhere else? That's where the drums are. Where do you expect me to go if not there? I'm gonna sit here? No. So it was always that. I would always have like the freedom to go up there. So like, yeah, I never really, I think I grew up not really seeing like the boundaries and that kind of thing that I think a lot of people interact with, as far as like the physical spaces of churches and like the mental things that we do with those spaces. Yeah.
When I think back on that situation, like years later, yes, I remember the man cursing us out. Yes, I remember the woman putting her hand all in my face. And yes, I remember the pastor who was ineffective and did absolutely nothing. In fact, almost blamed us for the situation happening. At the same time, I remember the woman who literally held me as I was outside of the sanctuary about to collapse. I remember the multitude of women who saw that we were being ushered into the office, and they pushed themselves into the office and would not leave when asked to leave. The women who quieted the room as I was trying to speak with my voice as shaky as it was, but they quieted the room so my voice could be heard. I remember my peers who literally pulled up to the church after hearing what happened from other churches, came to the church to support and to see what they could do to help. And I remember all the messages that I received of support as news of the incident spread. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. I remember you all. I remember your names. And I think for me, it highlights, as human nature, we can have a day where 10 amazing things happen. But if there's that one thing that throws us off our game, that's the one thing our brains tend to highlight, or that we tend to latch onto. And I think if anything, this situation was a reminder, or is a reminder rather, that no matter what you go through, there's always going to be people in your corner, whether you know it or not. Listen, that was a lot, but the story's not done yet. Next time, we're talking the aftermath, the lessons, and what we're carrying forward.